And hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, it's so great to have you. I hope you enjoy the show, as I hope you've enjoyed all the shows that I've brought to you. Well, we're going to highlight a wonderful theater that's based here in the state of Connecticut. It's called the Little Theater of Manchester, and Dwayne Harris, the executive director, is my guest today. And Dwayne, thanks so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Of course, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
What I want to do, which I usually do when I open every show, is to introduce the guest to the viewer. So if you'd be kind enough, take us back into your background. Let us get to know you.
Sure. So probably the most interesting thing about me, unfortunately, is that I'm actually from Texas. So my then girlfriend, now wife, moved to Connecticut in 2002. And both with our undergrad degrees in theater, she was going to pursue a program at Wesleyan, and I just tagged along. And then things just started progressing for me here in Connecticut. I got my first job at Hartford Stage. Worked there for about 5 or 6 years, and then moved over and started working for the Bushnell Center for the Performing Arts, and worked in both aspects of those jobs. I worked in arts management. So at Hartford Stage, I worked directly with the managing director, and then worked in fundraising. And at the Bushnell, I worked primarily in fundraising. I did that for a little while, and then got an opportunity to work with an arts and entertainment consulting firm, AMS, out of Southport here in Connecticut. And I worked for them doing some marketing analytics for performing arts organizations all around the world. And then sort of happily stumbled into this opportunity with the Little Theater of Manchester. And that was about 10 years ago that I started, 10 years ago in May, that I started working as the executive director with the Little Theater of Manchester. So I've been involved with theater my entire life, from starting at the age of 13. So I'm pretty well versed in the ways of the theater world, and I'm really happy to have such a long tenure with the arts here in Connecticut in general, but especially at the Little Theater of Manchester, which is a great organization here in town.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that you were starting at an early age in the arts. And I have so many performers that watch the program. Did you ever think as a child that you were going to be performing as an actor or anything else in theater than what you're doing now?
For sure. So I definitely enjoyed being on stage when I was a kid. But throughout high school, I sort of leaned towards directing. So I wanted to pursue theatrical directing. And that's what I worked on in my undergrad degree program. And then I started at Hartford Stage, and had never really had much experience working with financials or numbers, or specifically with Excel. And I found that I had sort of a passion, a nerdy passion about working with that stuff. And so it sort of led me on a complete shift in my career trajectory. Still heavily involved, of course, with the arts and with theater specifically, but certainly never expected to be in the arts administration side. To be honest, I never, you don't really think much about all of the business that has to happen to run a theater, especially when you're a 13-year-old kid. You don't even realize that this is an opportunity to work in the arts.
Okay, as a 13-year-old kid, you start learning that there's something else besides performing on stage. What was it that took you over? What was the interest? What happened that made you start thinking about other things?
Yeah, I think that, for me, I mean, it is, I had a really, really tremendous mentor at Hartford Stage. the then managing director, Jim Ireland, for better or for worse, took me under his wing and sort of opened my eyes to this whole world of arts administration, arts management. He sort of inspired me to go on, and I ultimately got my MBA from UConn while working at the Bushnell. I went to a part-time program to get my MBA. Because I sort of realized I'd spent so much time working on performing and directing that there was this whole other world of management that I was really naive to, but I knew that that's the area that I wanted to pursue. So he certainly helped me follow that path. And I got my MBA and was able to bring this whole new world of business management, business understanding to work in the arts.
Now you're mentioning education, and there are probably a lot of people that say, but I want to do what he's been doing, but do I need education to be able to do what he's doing? Do you recommend pursuing the arts from a college point of view?
Good question. I, as a person in their 40s still dealing with college debt, my initial reaction is always, you should definitely know what you're getting into before you pursue it. That said, I think the thing, especially in the world of theater and performing, the thing that you can really get at college, it's hard to get anywhere else, is the ability to make connections within the industry. Now, I went to a general liberal arts program in Texas, which was a great program for me, but it didn't provide me with sort of the connections, the opportunities, the leverage that going to some other performing arts schools across the country would. So I think that's one thing that's really difficult to replicate and get anywhere else unless you sort of stumble in at the right place and at the right time. But college programs definitely provide that for you. I have a friend who got their MFA from Columbia, and that just sort of opened up all sorts of opportunities in the business world for her, and was able to get a job actually working with Disney theatricals right out of that. So I think that I think that's sort of the one thing that it's difficult to replicate. I think everybody has to travel their own path and find what makes the most sense for them. Some people do really well in those sorts of educational environments and sort of need that direction, and other people don't. So I don't have a straightforward answer other than just be aware that college debt is no joke.
And you're saying theater the whole time, which is wonderful. I have so many theater people that come on the show, and I just adore them. But have you thought of any other mediums, film, television, video, commercials, any other things that you've done or have interest in?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely am, a theater nerd at heart. I have a deep appreciation for theater. But that said, all the creative arts I think are super interesting. Sort of the most closely aligned to the work that I do now is film, and so I've looked at opportunities to work on the management side of film. But really, it'd be difficult for me to say no to a job in the arts field in general. I really am passionate about the importance of arts in our communities, and serve on a couple of different boards and groups across the state that are helping in areas beyond just theater, but in the arts in general.
Okay, so you have moved on. How is theater for you in the state of Connecticut? I mean, you're here from another state. Is it a good state to be in, to be involved in theater?
Yeah, for sure. Apologize. So growing up in Texas, especially where I grew up in West Texas, there was one opportunity to see theater in my town, and it was a community theater, and that was the the majority of my experience with theater. So coming to Connecticut, where, especially in the community theater world, where one Friday night you have like 7 different opportunities to go and see a play or musical, all within a 30-minute drive, I think it still sort of blows my mind. When I'm looking at what our Little Theater Manchester's competition is for a specific weekend, and just looking across the state and seeing so many opportunities, it still to this day just blows my mind that there's just so much rich theater in the state. And when we initially, I mentioned that we initially moved up here so my wife could attend a program at Wesleyan, but I also, before coming up here, I knew about Hartford Stage, I knew about Long Wharf, and I knew about Yale and the regional theater opportunities here in Connecticut, which I certainly didn't have, in where I was at in Texas. And so, to have those 3 really powerhouse, phenomenal theaters in one state, I think is just a really magical thing. And so there's a plethora of theater activities here in Connecticut, which I absolutely love. And I've had friends come up and move up here actually from Texas as well. And they say the same thing, that, you sort of fall over the number of theater opportunities here in town or here in the state.
Okay, let's hold that thought and take a break. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You're tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
One of the most common cons this time of year is the utility scam. A bad actor may call or text you claiming to be with the utility company and threaten to turn off your electricity, saying you haven't paid your bill. They may also try to steal your money and sensitive personal information through a fake home energy assessment. This ruse often includes a phony credit check, which requires you to hand over your banking information and even your social security number. They may claim they can save you money on your energy bills if you buy their discounted equipment, but all you'll get is a big credit card bill. Always check with your utility company before letting someone into your home. Even if they're wearing credentials, they may be fake. Also, utility companies won't call or text you out of the blue threatening to turn off the lights. And while they do energy assessments, you have to set them up ahead of time. They don't just send people knocking on doors. For more information on how to protect yourself, visit Better Business Bureau at bbb.org. And to report a scam, visit bbb.org/scam tracker.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, it's so great to have you. Hope you're enjoying the show. We're highlighting the Little Theater of Manchester, and Dwayne Harris, the executive director, continues to be my guest. And Dwayne, let's talk about the Little Theater of Manchester. I know my guests, my viewers are saying, I haven't heard of it, I've heard of it, I've been there, I'd love to go. Tell us what it's all about.
Yeah, so the Little Theater of Manchester is located here in Manchester, Connecticut. It's been around since the 60s. 1961 was when they held their very first meeting. So it's been around quite a while. So we're currently housed in Cheney Hall, which is a historic building here in Manchester. It's was originally built in 1867 as part of the Cheney Brothers silk mills that are part of the Manchester's rich history. And so we currently operate out of that building and have a wonderful, magical place to call home. We've been in that space since 1991, I want to believe, is when the first show premiered out of that space. So today we present typically 5 shows during a year, 5 community theater shows, typically 3 plays and 2 musicals, though we like to mix that up quite a bit. So we're a community theater, which means that it's all amateur performers, although I use the term amateur very, very clinically because the quality of the performances we get, if anybody's attended any community theater here in Connecticut, they know that we are rich in talent in terms of performers and actors, that most of them have regular 9-to-5 day jobs working in insurance or accounting or and various, any other non-arts related job. But then they spend their evenings coming to the Little Theatre of Manchester and rehearsing and working so that we can put on these shows. We typically do three weekends of every play or musical, 9 to 10 performances of each. Cheney Hall holds about 300 people, seated for a theater performance. We are currently in a really exciting time where we just closed a play 2 weekends ago, and every single performance of it was essentially sold out. Unfortunately, the weather sort of played havoc with our schedule a little bit, so we did have to cancel a couple performances. And weren't able to completely make them up. But we are just seeing a tremendous outpouring of support from the local community. Really, since post-COVID, all of our, you'd be hard-pressed to find a night in Cheney Hall where the audience wasn't practically sold out. So yeah, it's a great community theater. We rely on the talent and passions of our local actors, directors, designers, somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 volunteers over the course of the year come together to make theater happen at Cheney Hall.
Now you're mentioning Cheney Hall, and cheneyhall.org is your website. So what will the viewer find when they go to the website?
Yeah, so right now we have on the homepage we have a list of all of our upcoming plays, musicals, as well as we have a jukebox concert series, which are basically just one night only performances of different cover bands. So for example, this Friday night we have a Elton John cover band coming in. The primary thing that you see on the website right now is our big intro for 9 to 5, our next play of the 2025 season, our next musical of the 2025 season. 9 to 5, the musical, is opening in April. And so that's sort of the big headline on the website right now.
How about for the people who'd like to work with the theater, your technical people, your actors, so on and so forth? How do they get in touch with you to be able to present themselves to you that they'd like to be associated with the theater?
Yeah, so we have two options. One is right on the website. We have a section called Play a Part, where you can drop down into that and you can see everything from a volunteer form to find out to sign up, or a list of all of our upcoming auditions, because as a community theater relying on local talent, all of our auditions are open to the general public. Anybody can come in and audition for any role at any time we're holding auditions. So those are a couple of options, but my recommendation is always to reach out to our box office. We have a lovely woman there named Debbie, who answers 99% of all the calls, and she will take anybody through the entire experience of getting signed up and learning more about the different areas where people can play a part, what they can do. She'll bring people in for a tour of the facility and then introduce them to, depending on what their interest is, whether it's our tech director or the gentleman that runs our scene shop, and can get them connected to the right place. She also is in charge of maintaining the usher schedule. So she has an amazing knack for being able to talk to anybody who comes in the door, talk them into ushering at least one time for the Little Theater.
Okay, so 9 to 5 is your play that's happening in April. What does the rest of 2025 look like for you? Have you even thought about 2026?
So the first part of that question, the rest of 2025, so we run on a calendar year. So our first show, I apologize. Sorry about that. Our first play of the season was the murder mystery Murder In, which I mentioned closed a couple weekends ago. 9 to 5 opens April 11th. In June, we have the play Proof. In August, we have Neil Simon's Plaza Suite. And then we close our 2025 season in November with Sweeney Todd. So that's our typical five show season. In regards to 2026, people always, it always seems like it should be a quick and easy process to, to choose a season for the next year, because there's just so many plays and musicals to choose from. But that's actually the problem, is that there are so many plays and musicals to choose from. So we have a committee of people that actually starts in January, February of for example, they're starting now or started a couple months ago, reading plays, taking suggestions, looking at reading musicals for our 2026 season. So we typically try to announce the following year's season, in in June, July, sometime over the summer is typically when we aim to have the next year's schedule set.
Okay, your title, Executive Director, that's a very big title, probably with a lot of responsibilities. What is your day-to-day schedule like? What are your responsibilities for the theater?
Yeah, so it is. It's a sort of wear many hats title. So my primary responsibilities for the organization are finance, marketing, fundraising, and managing the building operations. But within those categories, there's at least 10 different hats I wear under each of those individual categories. But really, at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that the business operates, on a day-to-day basis. So everything from making sure that we're fully staffed up, our box office is fully staffed up, making sure that we have enough house managers and volunteers and ushers on duty for each performance. There's some days where we're running behind and I have to grab a broom and sweep leaves off the patio because there's nobody else available to do it. So it really is a plethora of activities that keep me busy. But again, my primary responsibilities are I like to think of it as making sure that we are well positioned in the community from both an audience standpoint, but also from a funding standpoint, making sure that people know that the value that we add to not just the greater Manchester community, but to the entire Connecticut theater scene, making sure that everyone's aware of the Little Theater of Manchester and the work that we do, the value that we bring, and really, making sure that when we have all of these volunteers putting in, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40,000 hours every year, making sure that people know about that and that we have an audience that will come up and that will show up and support the work that they're doing.
And my thoughts of your future. Have you thought about a year out, 5 years out? Do you have a plan as to how the growth of the theater is doing?
Yeah, so we're, as I mentioned before, we're in a really exciting time of growth right now, where we are adding, we can, because of all the various resource limitations, you can only add so many performances of a show. But we're running into a point where we're maximizing, beyond maximizing the amount of people that we can serve. So we're looking at, we're always discussing those opportunities that would allow us to do more, serve more people, bring in more people. We are shortly announcing a new children's initiative, which will run for a couple of weekends in August, that will allow children. We don't do children's programming, just as a general rule. We haven't, at least not in my 10 years here. And so we're going to start working with children's with a sort of a summer camp this summer in August. That information is coming out soon. So that's one way that we're looking to say, hey, we have some availability here. We can fill it with this program. We're always looking at different partnerships with different organizations. We are partnering with different entities from the deaf community to be able to present different American Sign Language interpreted performances that we wouldn't normally get to do on our main stage. So like last November, we did an ASL interpreted Rocky Horror Picture Show. We're looking to bring that back and to engage that audience in different ways. So we're looking for ways to utilize the resources that we have now to reach more people. And so, those sorts of partnerships are the things that we're really looking at building on in the next year, the next 5 years. It'd be a great problem to have if we found that we were completely at capacity in our own space and really needed to start looking for alternate space to carry on our activities.
Okay, we are just about out of time. Any closing thoughts for the viewer?
So I would just say, as I always say, if you've never heard of the Little Theater of Manchester, or even if you had and just haven't had the chance to make it out yet, I really encourage you to come out and see what we have going on. If for nothing else, I'll just say that we've been going through what's now a 5-month renovation of our restrooms to expand the amount of restrooms that we have, and that should be complete in the next couple of weeks. So if for nothing else, come and visit us so you can see our brand new restrooms. But 9 to 5 is our next big show. It's going to be an absolute treat. But tickets are selling very quickly. So I would encourage you, if you have any interest in that, to take a look sooner rather than later.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned in to Arts and Entertainment. In case you need to reach me, I'm at artsandentertainment@mail.com. Well, I hope you have a super day today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time.